guys, welcome back. Today is going to be more of a chatty discussion video. I don't do these kinds of videos a lot on my channel, but sometimes there's this idea that comes to my mind and I kind of need to talk about it. So this is going to be it, and as you've maybe seen from the title, it's about buying books and accumulating books, owning books, what that kind of entails, what it tells us about ourselves. And this is something that's been going through my head quite a lot in the last weeks and months. And while doing that, I started trying to be more conscious about when do I actually buy books? Why do I buy books? Is there a certain pattern of, I don't know, in these months I for some reason bought a lot of books that followed this theme or whatever. And so it got me thinking about being a reader and maybe having a similar buying pattern, and what happens when we accumulate all these books, and do we even read them at all? And one thing that really sparked this discussion with myself in my head was a podcast episode from one of the podcasts I really like that I've mentioned in my video that I did about my favorite podcasts. It's called What Should I Read Next? And there's this episode called What Shouldn't I Read Next? And I will link it in the description so you can listen to it. And in this episode, the guest discussed with the host a lot about owning a lot of books and why books accumulate in the reader's library, why we buy them at certain times. Are they even for us at all? And there was also a lot of trying to figure out, are there any books on here that I bought for a reason that now doesn't seem valid to me anymore, or it doesn't need to be there anymore? So yeah, this got me thinking a lot about why we buy books at certain specific times. So for me, I saw that definitely a trend is when I get interested in a certain topic. And then I tend to research what books are good for that topic, which ones can I get. I don't always get all of them, but I might get one or two. But then I might not, I might read one because I'm really in the topic, but I might not read all of them. And so these sit on the shelves. Then I might buy a certain type of books because I feel like at a certain moment I need some comfort reads. Or sometimes you just visit a bookshop and you want to buy something there because you want to, help out the booksellers, or you just want to treat yourself to something really pretty. And it's maybe a book that you've never heard of and you haven't checked beforehand or anything. And that got me thinking about whether an interest in a book or a drive to get to it and to read it soon, if that somehow has a set expiration date, if it depends on the person or it depends on where the interest comes from and how high the motivation is. I was also thinking a lot about books that are talked about, especially here on BookTube, for a certain amount of time. Usually the ones that spring to mind are definitely the ones that are selected for specific prizes, and there's a lot of people who follow very strongly these prizes and try to read all the long list and the short list and so on. And so I think this also leads to some sort of drive of getting a set of books that the motivation is there for a certain project to read them at a specific time, but then if you take too long to do that or you lose interest, then that's also books that end up on the shelves, and that might be some that, looking back, you think, why did I even get this book? Where does it even come from? And I think the same goes with buying books on the incentive of other people's recommendations. And that's definitely not a bad thing. That's one of the main reasons I'm putting out videos is because I want that conversation with other readers and I want to get recommendations and give recommendations. But I'm kind of aware that recommendations, especially if you get too many of them, if you get like recommendation overload, which can be quite easy on BookTube, there's then a certain hierarchy of which of these recommendations actually mean something to me. But then you might be, treating yourself to books at a specific time, and some recommendations might be very fresh and you're like, yes, I'll get this one. But then that's maybe not the books that you have an interest in on long term. So thinking about all these things, I kind of started looking at my own shelves. This is my shelf of unread books, and I've been looking at them and trying to think which books I could look at right now and be like, I don't know if in the near future, like 6 months, a year from now, I'll even be still interested in reading these books. In some of the ones that I could name, and I think the more I thought about them, the more I would like give myself some reasons why I should not get rid of them, obviously, because that's also part of my own overthinking mechanism. But I kind of sense specific trends of these books that in the whim of the moment I would say, yeah, I don't know if I really want them to be on that shelf. So I thought I would try and deconstruct that with you and show you a few examples. And yeah, just in general, talk a bit more specifically about some books that I've added on my TBR. Why did I buy them at a certain time, and which ones could I maybe get rid of, and why have I hung on to them so long? And maybe it could be a very liberating experience. So we'll see how this goes. So I'm going to start with some books that I bought recently, and I've been trying to think, why did I buy them? I'm only going to show 2 of them, like representatively, but I bought more than that. I bought some secondhand books from the French children's author Evelyne Brisou-Pellen. I talked about the last books that I read by her like a month or so ago, and I rediscovered her because I read a lot of her books when I was younger and loved them. They're historical fiction set in medieval times. And so I had to buy some other books from her series, Garin-Trousseau, and as I was browsing, I was looking at her other books set in medieval times, and she has another series that's following a young girl. So I definitely wanted to try that out, and think it's nice to discover something that I definitely haven't read by her. But this was definitely a purchase that led back to a moment where I felt like I needed some comfort reads, and also because I was very, very over the moon that I found and rediscovered this author that I used to love as a kid, and that these books still hold up, which, for example, the Nancy Drew series don't really do that for me anymore. So I think it's also out of that strong enthusiasm that I got these books. 2 other ones are also, I think I only bought 1 more of these, but they kind of follow a same theme, and I bought them at the same time. It's the Hound of Death collection by Agatha Christie, so her like scary horror stories, and Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House. Because for some reason, I think a month after lockdown really started, I felt like reading scary books. I haven't gotten to them yet, but I want to now that it's getting darker outside, but for some reason I had an urge to buy them. So this would definitely go into the category of wanting a certain feel at a certain moment. But I could definitely, these are books that I won't get rid of, because I'm pretty sure this comes really in cycles. Like I will want these kinds of books with this kind of feel at some point soon. And finally, another reason why I bought specific books in the last few months, representative for this is Dorothy L. Sayers' The Nine Tailors, and that's a book that I bought in preparation of future videos I want to do in the Beyond Agatha Christie series. So I want to get going with this series and bring out some more videos. I have lots of ideas, but they require more preparation than my usual wrap-up videos. And, you know, if I want to talk about crime fiction, I really need to read something by Dorothy Ysée and see what I think of it. So this was also bought with a specific purpose, and I really hope that, you know, alone for this, my motivation is still really strong, and I want to try out her writing and tell you guys about what I think about it. So that's another reason. Now we'll get to some books that I drew from my shelves that I could see myself getting rid of now that I really think hard about it and really think hard about why I even keep them. Let's start with the easiest category, and the easiest category is the category of books that I found for free. So there's a few little libraries not far from where I'm living, and I found this book by Evelyn Waugh for free there. And I've heard a lot about his books, especially Vile Bodies, I think it's called. And I thought, you know, I can also try some of his other satirical books. But now that I read the description, I don't really think I want to read this. And I mean, I got it for free, so someone else can enjoy it, and it doesn't have to sit here and take up some space and not be in the hands of someone who actually wants to read it. So that's this one. Next one, I have one that I got secondhand, so I wouldn't be too sad to get rid of it. And that's one that I want to read, or at a specific time I thought I wanted to read it, and now I'm not sure if in the foreseeable future I'll be in the right headspace to read it, and that's Patrick Ness's A Monster Calls. I've heard several reviews of people, and I still think it might be something that I want to read at some point in my life, but honestly, I don't see myself stomaching this in the next times, so I'm okay with parting with it, I think. And if I still, some years down the line, feel the urge to get back to it, it's not a book that's gonna go out of print or anything. I can get my hands on it at some other time. The next category is also kind of along these lines of, you know, somehow letting go of wanting to read something, at least in the foreseeable future. And it kind of pains me, but I've tried to read a bit of these books a few times, and I still wasn't hooked. And that's the second and the third book in the Neapolitain Quartett by Elena Ferrante. I bought the first book and I liked it, and at the time I wanted to see what happens next. And these books, I don't know, they're so big, and I'm not even sure I really care anymore about these two girls that we're following. And I don't really see myself being motivated to get into this big chunker of a 4-part book saga. And I don't think in the future either, but I will take the first book and these two to my parents' house, because first they might get read there before I get to it. And I still want to have them. I still think it's some of these books that I might read at some point, but not now. And so I'm okay with not having them crowd the shelves here. Another book that I will probably get rid of physically from these shelves is the third and fourth book in the Inheritance series, the Aragon books by Christopher Paolini. I got these 4 books on eBay for very cheap. It was a time, I think 1.5 years ago or 2 years ago, where I wanted to revisit these series. I didn't really like the first book. I kind of enjoyed the second, and I still want to read all of them. But what I did do is I actually read the second book completely on audio, and these books are so freaking huge, and I don't see myself sitting around with this big book. And I think the only way I will be finishing these series is on audio, so I don't see why I'm keeping these books. So what I'll do is probably invest my next free Audible credits and use them for this, and then I'll have them on my audiobook shelf, and I'll remember they're there, and I'll get to them at some point, but these also take up some space, and I don't think they need to be there. And the last category is one that I think a lot of us can relate to. And that's the buying the book because it's pretty. And I have two examples for them that from the color scheme seem to be working quite well. The first one is The Binding by Bridget Collins. I only became aware of this book because it looks like this. It's kind of one of my venturing into trying out fantasy that I might enjoy. And I don't know, I'm not very successful with that journey, and I have tried reading into this before and it didn't really hook me. I think I'm getting less and less interested in getting to it, and that's really a shame because it's brand new and I could sell it. It's in perfect condition and someone could get it that really wants to read it. So I think I'm gonna get rid of that one as well. And little shout out to Laurent from the channel Laurent Macar, because she has tried to read this and couldn't get into it. And I mean, she likes fantasy and magical realism, so if she doesn't like it, don't think I will like it. So thanks for that. And the other one is one that I got quite cheap at my local bookstore because they were kind of clearing it out. And I think it's one of these typical pretty books that probably are like these typical books that you gift people. I've talked about this because in my videos about the German books I have on my shelves. But the more I think about it, the more I don't think this is the way I kind of want to experience the Norse sagas and myths. So I think this one will go as well, but I mean, kudos to the person who did this cover because it's amazing. Okay, this was a bit rambly, but I hope you enjoyed this video and the discussion, and obviously I want to know what you guys think about all of this. Do you think about when you buy books? Do you see some patterns? Do you see some patterns in types of books that you buy at certain times? How fast does your interest in a book disappear or at least diminish? And how do you deal with that when having a collection of books you want to get to at some point? And how often do you get rid of books, or how often do you critically assess if the books you own are still somehow relevant to you as a person or as a reader? I would really, really love to know what you guys think. And that's it from me today. I hope in the meantime that you're reading great books, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!